It's that time again. Theology in the Streets podcast where no topic goes untouched. Yo, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you share these episodes whenever you listen, amen? Yo, it's your boy, late to the game, Pastor Lou. And I got across from me.
You got your boy, Kirk Classic, back in the building, baby.
Hot on the mic.
It's been a minute, baby.
That's where you at, hot on the mic.
Yes, sir, we back, baby.
Yo, I got on my left right next to me.
Yo, back from the ashes, the prodigal son, it's your boy Big Zeke, coming back at you one more again.
Big Zeke. And filling in for Don Daughters, who's out with a little cold. Don't know if it's COVID, but, you know, shout out to Don Daughters. Hope you feel better, bro. Who we got?
Chino Ching the barber, yeah.
Big Ching the barbers.
Bob.
Need a cut. He got that special for you. Oh, my bad.
Your boy. Boy's a magician with the blade.
Yo, man. And we also have Dave in the cut Jones, who's working the board. That's with us, doing his thing. He's in the cut right now. But let's keep it grinding here, man. We on our last episode of our series, Crime and Consequences. It's for the youth. It's for the youth.
These two youths.
But no, we've had some good episodes, man, and they've been a blessing and a half. Some real stories, real life. It's what's going on every day. You know, and the brothers that have been on, they've been a blessing. And today we're going to finish it off with another story from a dear friend of mine, a big brother to me, brother from another mother. We have with us Daniel Lopez. Introduce yourself, Danny.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Danny, Big D. Is in the house.
D in the house, Big D in the house. So we're going to get into his story. Just to kind of give you a little background, Danny did some federal prison time, and we want to go into it from an aspect of how everything broke off, from what he was doing to eventually how the police got involved, to speaking to detectives, speaking to his lawyer, trying to figure out the game per se, and then, you know, actually going and doing some federal prison time. So let's jump into it, Danny. Tell us, man, what were you doing before you got caught up with law enforcement? Like, how did it get to the point where you did get caught up with the law enforcement?
Okay, I mean, I think we need to start with a little background.
Go ahead.
And, you know, my story, of course, you know, I'm born and raised in Rochester, New York. Grew up on the east side. And I want to say this to be in particular and specific to, you know, it's going to go down the line. You know, I was raised in a home with a mother and a father. You know, my mother married a man who raised me when I was about 3-4 years old, and he became my father, so I refer to him as my father. My biological is still in my life, so he's still also around. But I grew up in a good home. I grew up in a Christian home, you know what I'm saying? And I say that because, you know, I know what you guys have been talking about, this crime and punishment series, and anyone could get snagged up into this life, you know, the life that I once lived. And, you know, I want to say that even though I grew up in a good home, our home physically wasn't a bad neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't, you know, say right outside the door, although we had structure, value in the home, you know, there was a lot of temptation right outside the door. So, you know, I mean, I just grew up like anybody else. You know, we grew up in the same kind of like atmosphere. You know, we went to church, and, you know, my parents were God-fearing, you know, so I understood the values of Christianity. So, but, you know, as I got older, you know, the temptation was there. You know, I know you mentioned, Zeke, that you was a prodigal son. My mom used to call me the prodigal son all the time because she said you left it. But, you know, it started small. It started off in like the late 90s, you know, really kind of just like doing a lot of partying, you know, kind of chasing that nightlife, and started off with just, you know, smoking weed and drinking and, you know, a lot of that ratchet lifestyle, you know, that definitely wasn't honoring my parents. But I just went down that path, man, and one thing led to the next, and what started off as, you know, trying to support a weed habit turned into, you know, bigger things. And that's how I got tied into it. I mean, I like in the late 90s and early 2000s, I just came across, some connections, and I started with, just selling, drugs, and next thing you know, you're in the game, and it's like it just, you become numb to it, and for a while there, for about a good 5 to 6 years, that's what my life was. I was into growing weed and dabbling into other things, other drugs, and I had gotten some connections from other places outside of the state, and it just became a thing where it just became, you make money fast and you spend it fast, and it was fun at the time. It really was. You got to do what you want. You didn't have to clock in a punch or a job or anything like that, and you just, you become addicted to that. And as fast as the money comes, is as fast as the money goes. So what were you pushing?
I
it was mostly weed, and I also got into some other drugs. There was some coke. It came. I learned a couple tricks on how to turn this into that, and but I wasn't really out in the streets. I wasn't that type of hustler.
Like a block type.
Nah, I wasn't that type of hustler. I was kind of low money. It was I wasn't flashy. I wasn't trying to be out there. I knew enough not to. I took I dipped in there a little bit, but I didn't go all in. I wasn't on any corners. I wasn't running any spots like that. Trap houses. No, it wasn't that serious. And you know what? The thing I think about it now, like I thought that I could get away with this because of that. Thought I was smarter than this, than the system, the legal system.
All right. So when was it that the Fed? Now, who raided? Was it local police? Was it federal police? Who raided your house? Where were you living at? Because you had an interesting little spot when all this broke out. You were in the cut. I mean, where you lived at was just, it was kind of not isolated, but it was hidden.
Yeah. So I'll say this: in November of 2005, I was in my house. I had a house that was in the cut, like you said. It was this spot in Arundecoit that I would have to take you there to show you it, but it was off the grid. It was really a hidden place, and friends would come over and we'd hang out. But it wasn't like, again, I wasn't, not that many people knew where I was at. So about 6 o'clock in the morning, I don't know, y'all remember Ice-T.
Police at my door.
I heard a bang at my door, and I'm just like, I was on the second floor, and I looked out my window, and I peeked out the window. And I saw somebody. I saw someone coming out of a car and walking towards the front of my house, and I thought it was a friend of mine. And this friend had a tendency to come up. He used drugs, and he was a friend though, but he was a night. He used to break night. He used to say that. And once in a while, he'd come by my house like, "Hey, what you doing? Hey, want to hang out? This and that." And I thought it was him, so I just tried to ignore it because I was dead tired and sleeping. He'll go away. And then this banging just wouldn't go away. Bam, 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 bam. I'm like, yo. And then I got mad. So I got out of my bed and I went to the kitchen, the back window, and I went to open the door to yell at him. And as soon as I opened the door, it was the DEA. Okay? So the Alphabet Boys got the FBI, the DEA, and the CIA. And they had a warrant for my arrest. They didn't have a search warrant. They had a warrant for my arrest, which is why they didn't kick in the door.
I see.
All right? So they were serving a search warrant. They had to identify me. Then they would take me into custody. These are all things that I found out after the fact, technicalities. But I remember sitting in that kitchen, and it was cold. It was November, and that floor was cold. And I was laying down, and it was on top of me. And I was just like, wow, this is how it's going to go down. And when I found out it was the DEA, I was just like, what? Because, again, I did what I did, but I try to stay low-key. And I couldn't for the life of me wonder, why would the DEA be coming after me? But that's exactly how it went down.
All right, so they come in. Now, they served you with an arrest warrant. Did they eventually search the house?
So, again, these are all things. And I want to say this, too. Prior to then, I had not been in trouble with the law. You know what I'm saying? I think one time I got a citation for smoking weed outside a Jay-Z concert in Buffalo, stuff like that. But other than that, I had no criminal history, no misdemeanors, nothing like that. So they have to secure the area. Now, in securing the area, they went into my basement, and my basement had a little grow room, which was something that I used to do for myself for a little stash and sell some stuff
So
here
you're
and there.
growing weed.
Yeah.
Okay.
A small thing. But yeah. But so once they saw that gave them probable cause to search the rest of the premise.
Okay.
So they called in to the judge, he signs off, and they search out, but that's it. I mean, they came up with some equipment, some scales and stuff like that. But other than that, I wasn't into guns to this day, you know what I'm saying? I didn't carry guns. I wasn't that. So it was really, they got the system going, and they got, a scale, a grinder, some stuff like that, some paraphernalia. But that's all it was.
Yeah.
So then from there, they took me downtown to the Fed building, and the whole entire time, again, I'm just in my mind is racing. I'm like, man, what is going on here? Like, I always thought that if I got busted, it'd be some local state or whatever. If it came down to that, and, I try to keep it clean and whatever and whatnot. But anyways, I mean, they put me in a room, and I was in there for hours. They just put me in the room, closed the door, and that was it. I didn't have contact with nobody. I'm just sitting there, my mind's racing. I'm trying to put the pieces together, like, man, what's going on here? What's going on here? I was like, I never sold to anybody that I didn't know.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? It wasn't like, oh, that one dude that I met after a bar one night that wanted this, and next thing you know, here they come. That's him. No, it wasn't like that. So, long story short, finally the door opens up, and this detective comes in, a DA agent. I won't say detective, an agent comes in, and he was like, all right, this is what we know. We know this, and that, blah, 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 blah. And the things that he said, immediately I knew what was going down. Mm-hmm. He said specific things. Now, he was coming in there to try to tell me, to try to scare me, like, oh, we got everything about you. What's up? Because immediately they sit there and say, are you going to talk to us or what you going to do? Once he laid all his cards out in front of me, my initial response is, I want to speak to a lawyer. Yeah. So then that's what happened. And then from there on that, I could kind of put the pieces together, like, where did this heat come from? From there, they took me down to a holding cell, and in the holding cell were my codees. And then right then and there, I knew exactly what was going on.
So the codees is co-defendants, right?
Yes. Yeah. So what had happened was eventually I got charged with conspiracy to possess cocaine and marijuana. And at that time, I was facing a minimum of 5 years.
Okay. And what was the max?
The feds have minimum mandatory guidelines, so it's like 5 years. So you just do that straight up, and then there'll be like probation after that. So with the feds, they have these sentencing guidelines back then. Again, this is all stuff that I learned after the fact because, again, I wasn't familiar with the criminal justice system like that. So that was a charge. And then I came up in front of the judge, and believe it or not, they released me on my own recognizance. I didn't even have to post bail or anything. It was just like, okay, which was funny to me. I'm like, and then there's this news stories, and it was crazy. Like, there's just all this hoopla and everything, and I'm like, it still don't seem right. Like, what is it that the federal government's going to invest all this money into for just my little self? But again, there's a reason for this that we're talking today, and what I want to say again is, if you think that you can get away with something, crime and punishment, it's always done in the dark, it's going to come to the light no matter what.
That's a fact.
Okay? So I kind of put the pieces together, and just to kind of generalize what was going on was I was messing with some cats that lived in Wayne County, okay, or that were from Wayne County but were living in Monroe County. They did most of their dirt in Wayne County. They caught an investigation in Wayne County, but these cats were living in Monroe County. What had happened was the Monroe County Sheriff Department had no jurisdiction in Monroe. So they wanted to open this investigation. They needed cooperation from the county. So they went to the state. For whatever reason, the state didn't want to pick up the case. So the only way they can have jurisdiction to have an open investigation between two counties was to go to the feds. And for whatever reason, the feds were like, sure, we'll take that case. So that's how I got wrapped up into a conspiracy to distribute cocaine and marijuana.
Okay. So, all right, any questions before we,
Daniel, let's keep it real. You know you had keys, bro. Push it away. I see you in the truck you was driving.
Howdy.
Yo. DEA, the Alphabet Squad.
The only keys I had were the keys to the truck. Listen, there was, I'm not going to, it was more than just marijuana. Yeah. I'll say that for sure. But, this is the thing. When it comes to the drug game, you know, and it depends on how you look at it. It's all perspective. You know, if you look at it from a narcos point of view, there's ones that either use forklifts and airplanes and submarines, and then the rest of y'all just chump change, nickel and dime cats on the corner trying to make, you know, a buck here and there. So, no, I mean, it did end up being something serious.
All right, so when you started to figure out, like, that they were linking you to these dudes in Wayne County, what was your initial thoughts? Like, were you connected with them, or were they just acquaintances? What was going on?
I mean, they started off as acquaintances, but yeah, we definitely was connected.
Okay.
There was a couple brothers that were doing their own things together but separately. You know what I'm saying? One of them was bringing in some serious weight in marijuana from Canada and distributing it, and then the other one was, you know, again, I would say a small-time hustler. But, you know, again, in a small town like that, well, in Wayne County, it's a bunch of small towns, a lot of drug use, and everybody knows everybody's business, so you can get the heat real quick over there. And that's what they got. They got that heat, so. Okay, so now you know, I mean, you first get
the glimmer of all these faces. When you sit down with your lawyer, okay, did you hire a lawyer or did they appoint you a lawyer? How'd that work?
I was appointed a lawyer, a federal, you know, lawyer, whatever you want to call it, you know. So he sat down with me initially, and he was like, and we just started talking, and he gave me this little hope. He's like, man, this ain't no big deal. This is nothing. You know what I'm saying? I've seen these cases 1,000 times. Well, you know what I'm saying? We'll see what they got to offer, and then we'll go from there. So what I did know, too, was that because I was so discreet in how I moved around, the connection with them was just a one-way street. They didn't know much about me, these cats from Wayne County. You know what I'm saying? I didn't grow up with these guys. This wasn't my peoples. These were acquaintances that I met through friends, and I had known for a little bit. I didn't really know them, but I knew enough about them that they partied and that they got down like that. So it started and ended with me. See what I'm saying?
Wait, okay, explain that. What do you mean it started and ended with you? What do you mean by that?
The case was originally for them. They brought me into the conspiracy.
Okay.
But they had no idea about my other life, my regular life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they had no idea what I did or who I talked to or who I hung out with or anything.
So these guys were just throwing you in there.
Oh, yeah.
They snitched.
They snitched them out.
Yeah.
Now, how many other people did they snitch at?
They had an informant that was working for them. He saw me come he was at the house one night when I went to go visit one of these cats. So he identified me. This case, by the way, was also a wiretap. Now, I don't know if y'all remember them Nextel two-way joints. Again, me thinking we slick. We always used to do stuff on the walkie-talkie thinking that's a... But there's no, you don't say the federal government or any law enforcement that way. They, you know, it's a cat and mouse game, but, you know, you're not getting away with anything. You know what I'm saying? It all comes to light in an investigation. So I do remember one day going to his house, and I was dropping him off some stuff, and then as soon as I left, I got pulled over by a city cop. Like as soon as I left, like within a block. And he came and he says, oh, no, your license plate was no. Okay, just want to make sure. Let me see your ID. And I gave it to him. And I was nervous. So I'm like, you know, what's this? You know, and then he says, oh, no, you're all right, and just let me go. So at that time, I hit homeboy up on the two-way. I'm like, yo, I just got pulled over coming out your house. He's like, oh, shit. Oh, I'm sorry. He goes, man, good thing you didn't get pulled over before you came over here. Now, he's saying that in a two-way. And I know it's because I heard.
Yeah.
That they, you know, I'll get into that later, but you get all the evidence before you go to court or trial. So I actually heard the two-way conversation between us. And what that city cop was doing was identifying me. So they were watching us. So, I mean, again, these are all things that I'm learning after the fact.
Okay, so you sit with your lawyer, and he's like, this is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that gives you a little bit of hope, but really emotionally, what were you thinking? What were you feeling?
Well, I mean, I knew right then and there that it was over in terms of my criminal life. Because I always kind of knew that. I was like, you know, I'm going to do this. If I get caught, I'm not going to mess with this no more. So at this point, it was damage control. I was trying to figure out, let's say, what's going on. Because, I mean, I had no idea how this criminal proceedings and everything was going to go. Again, I got wrapped up in a conspiracy. I saw the players that were in that bullpen that were being held in, and a lot of them I didn't know, so I know they didn't know much about me. And really the only one who knew something was the one brother. And at the end of the day, he didn't know much. So I was trying to play that, they could only know so much. How can I, work this? And again, I knew I had no criminal history. I didn't get caught with a gun. By the way, that's another thing I want to tell you. With the feds, and actually, if you're, even if it's a legal weapon, if you get caught with drugs, that enhances your sentencing immediately. It's a big difference in terms of time. You're talking about minimum 5 years to 10 to 15 immediately, just by having a gun. You see what I'm saying? And it keeps on enhancing depending on your strike. So if you have a criminal past, it just goes deeper and deeper. So you got people in the feds that get caught. And then if it's crack cocaine, it's even worse. Now, a lot of that has changed recently, but back in the days, and I'm saying back in the days, this was 2005. I feel old, but it still was 16 years ago. There were still sentencing guidelines as how it used to be when those crack cocaine, in the 80s had came through. So I talked to my lawyer and I sit down and he really plays it off like it's nothing. And I actually believed it. So I kind of roll with that. I'm like, okay, maybe I might, come away with this unscathed, even though they were charging me with a conspiracy with that 5 years. Immediately after that, they gave, my lawyer called me shortly after that, like a few months later. Hey, I just want to let you know they offered us a plea deal. And I'm like, what is it? He's like, if you plead guilty to conspiracy to possess marijuana with intent to distribute, we'll give you a year and a day and probation. And he's looking at me like, good, right? But I'm like, nah, man. I'm not trying to go to jail at all. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because in my mind, I was like, nah, I don't think this is deserving to go to jail. But that was just me being ignorant. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Well, so before your lawyer hits you up, though, right? Like, obviously, everything hits the fan. Now you got family members are finding out. Your boys are finding out. What happens in that time frame before your lawyer hits you with the deal? Like, who's there, like, for you and who's not?
Again, I had separated my business and pleasure with these people. So they brought me this heat, but they had no idea what this was going on. So I was, safe to say, my family, my friends, the ones that I really rode with, whether it was illegal or not, whether we were dealing stuff or not. I mean, first of all, that all stopped then and there. So, but I had, people that I knew that were in that game. I rest assured, what I'm saying, they were good. I got up with who I need to get up with and let them know, this was something that I was going to deal with. I was going to take this, Yeah. So family-wise, again, I told you, like I said earlier, my mother, my father raised me, to be better. So there was a lot of shame, man. I disappointed them. I know I did. And they had no idea. So it wasn't like, denial, man, is serious. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of power behind that. So all those years that I was kind of like philandering in the streets and whatnot like that, my parents, I want to believe that they knew, but they just didn't want to believe, that I was doing that. So to them, too, it was a big shock and surprise. To some people. Yeah. It was.
That is big, man. Because, no lie, I dabbled myself. You know what I mean? And like you said, anybody can get caught up in that. And sometimes it's just the luck of the draw. But that was one thing that stopped me was fam. To think about the shame, you know what I mean? So I could definitely feel you on that, man. Yeah. Especially you was born in Christian home. We talked about that, you know what I mean?
I want to come from the point of view of before you got into this, what led you to even consider this as an option, for, financial gain, I'm saying? Like, what led you into this life?
Yeah, I mean, I could see, I could vividly see that trajectory. And it started off really small. It started off with me smoking weed and buying or getting my hands on a 1/4 ounce to bag up, and that turned into a 1/2 ounce. But it was really to support just, it was laziness, just to support, to be able to still smoke weed without spending my own money. I mean, I always worked and I went to school, don't get it twisted. But it was just support a habit, really. You know, and then really just of smoking
So
weed
it started
habit.
off as like this like a slow,
Slow, funny, it's no big deal. This ain't nothing, you know. But you know, if you smoke weed, you hang out with a bunch of other people that smoke weed.
So at
and
what point then did it change? What point did it turn from you supporting a habit to now you thinking that you can make a quote unquote career out of it?
I got a call from somebody, and they said, "Yo, come to, I gotta holler at you." And at that time, again, it was just small. No, nothing big. It wasn't even anything that I was leaning on. And they had a family member that had a connect. And he didn't know what to do with this weight. And when I say weight, he was like, I got this weed, I can give you this for at this price. And I was like, how much you talking about? He's like, as much as you want. And I'm like, what? A pound to what are you talking about? He goes, whatever you want, 5, 10, 20 pounds. Whatever amount you could take is that. So it went just like that, from like this to bang.
Yeah.
So it went from a small time responsibility to a potentially big time responsibility. And I knew at that time how valuable that was, because you can aspire to be a drug dealer, but if you don't have a connection, you ain't gonna do nothing. So that's all it was. I came across a good connect, and that connect changed everything.
Yeah.
And then once that opens up the doors, then you just go from there.
Now, during that point in time, was there? I'm pretty sure there probably was, but can you describe moments where you felt like, yo, this is like too serious? Like, what am I? You know what I mean? Like, have you started to second guess yourself? And
Early on, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Early on, no. There was times throughout that time where, I mean, again, I was so low key with the stuff. I didn't even have any necessary close calls. You see what I'm saying? And it was, I was strategic with that. I try to practice a discipline to keep this. I purposely was only dealt with a handful of people. I wasn't flashy. I know Gene said I had the big boy, but that was as much.
I remember, man, you took me to the crib.
No. But even then, I wasn't about rims. You know, I did have a little jewelry, whatnot, but it wasn't that serious. You know, I like to take vacations, and, you know, why everyone got to buy Jordans? Why you got to have nice sneakers, man? It's all about the ups, the Jordans, right?
Listen, that was my main reason. Hanging with the people, you know, being cool, that power trip starts to come in. And just being buy Jordans and sitting at the house looking what you got with all the money, you start to feel like the man. But no lie, you know, there was times where it hit me and be like, what am I doing with my life?
And that's it right there.
And it's almost like you said, you got to deny the cross. At that moment, you know, you just got to take it. I used to take a deep breath and just shake my hand and be like, yo, whatever. They got the J's and, you know, again, denying the cross.
Suppressing
I mean,
the truth,
yeah.
Absolutely. No, and that's kind of to back up what you were saying, Kurt. You know, there were times where I did have those thoughts. Like, I knew this couldn't last forever. Yeah. But, you know, it's the thing about that game is, and again, this is to the young kids out there, you know, you don't start. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, you start little, like I said, and then you wake up and the feds are at your door or whatever. And then it's not until you reflect and look back on it, you see all those little pieces. Yeah. And then, you know, but like what you were saying, I did have a lot of moments throughout those years where, and then the thing is, hustling isn't guaranteed. You know, you have your goods and your bads. You know, a drought comes over and you're not doing so good and that money isn't coming like it is. And then that's when you start to think like, man, this isn't sustainable. So, I mean, I always knew deep down inside that, you know, there was another life than this. Like this wasn't me.
It seemed like you had a fence, if you will, of a line that you wasn't going to cross.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But at the same time, slowly it seemed like that line kept getting moved for you.
Yeah.
You know what
I
I'm
agree.
saying?
Absolutely.
His line was, if I get caught once.
Yeah, right.
As long as I don't get caught, I'm good.
Before that happened, you know what I'm saying? It just like it seemed like it's just a slow progression of it getting bigger and bigger. So imagine, you know, if you didn't get caught, you know, who knows where
That's right.
Yeah,
where life may have ended up, you know what I'm saying, if you didn't get caught. So sometimes the punishment is God's sovereignty, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Of keeping us from us, because it seemed like you had convinced yourself that, man, if I keep low key and if I don't do this and if I don't do that, you know, it's kind of like let's be honest, some terrible people that think they're Christians, they convince themselves that, well, if I just go to church, if I just serve and I do this, and, you know, then I'm good, I'm going to go to heaven.
That's a great analogy, yes, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you sure?
No, you fool yourself.
Yeah.
And I knew better, though. That's the thing. The whole entire time I knew better. I mean, I have a great relationship with my mom, you know, so I would go see her knowing that I was doing this. You know what I'm saying? So it was always, in the back of my mind, that was always the one thing, that this wasn't going to last for her, and that, like, this just wasn't going to be me for her. But you just go day at a day, you know. I got to get up this week. I got this. I have this person. Then people do kind of become dependent on you. You become dependent on them, and you keep these relationships, and you just keep knocking it out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so your lawyer calls you, offers you the deal, and you're like, nah, I don't want that. Proceed from there. Like, what happens now? Now you talking with your lawyer.
Yeah.
now?
So because of what he was telling me before then, I was actually surprised that he told me that, and he was acting like this is good, because he always told me, man, you know, I've seen big cases in this, and this, there's no murder charge or violent crimes to this, you know, because a lot of times, you know, when you get into a conspiracy, if I get pulled into a conspiracy and me and you are that, but you're out here killing people, I can get caught up in
RICO law.
Yeah, exactly. So then it's, now you're talking about real serious stuff. So because these dudes were just kind of, you know, I mean, they were doing things too. They were moving things. But, you know, again, I was always under the assumption that, you know, this was, you know, I might get some probation, whatever. I honestly didn't think I was going to do any jail time. But even that was enough for me to be like, I'm done with this, because I had been exposed. That's it. The story was out there. This made the news. I mean, my parents knew about it. I mean, that was one thing. And that's one thing I can't understand to this day. Is that recidivism. You know what I'm saying? These people that come out of prison and they just go back. But I guess I gotta credit that to, you know, my upbringing and whatnot, and what I knew before then. But so the lawyer, you know, they say, hey, this year and a day, and I think it was like 3 years probation or something like that. And I was like, nah, I told him, I was like, probation, okay, cool, I'll sign off on that, but I'm not trying to do any jail time. Like, that wasn't, like, I'm like, nah. So this thing just dragged out, you know. And what I realized now that I didn't know then was the prosecutor that was working our case was this lady that was working here in Rochester, but she was up for a promotion in Philly. So eventually, as these cases just drag out, now mind you, during this whole time, people are copping pleas, everyone's snitching, and they're sentencing. So you get a case, 8 people get arrested, one by one, they're knocking them out. Oh, you're pleading to this, but snap, boom, boom. So they're closing those cases, and that's all they were concerned with at that point. She needs to close everything up before she went to Philly. So I was just dragging this along. Now, at the end of the day, it came down to 3 things. You want to go to trial? If you think you're innocent, we could take this to trial. Now, you probably know or do not know, but the federal conviction rate, they don't play. You take the feds to court, more than likely you're going to lose. It's like 90+%. Like, they don't play. You know, they have all these resources. You know what I'm saying? They have infinite money, infinite resources. You know, you're going to lose. And then if you lose that trial, what they call blowing trial, you going to jail. Yeah, they're going to slap the hammer on you, especially in the feds, right? And the feds is a little different than the state. You know, you're going to do that mandatory minimum. The good time is a little different, so you're doing the time. So there was to take it to trial, which I would have been risking at least 5 years for the original charge. Cop to the year and a day, or there's always an option, and that's work for the feds, which was never an option for me. You see what I'm saying? So they did try to entice me and try to say, well, you know, if you start telling this and that. I mean, I remember the prosecutor, the one I'm telling you that went to Philly. She was, you know, she told us, if you cooperate with us and you give us information on this and that, probation. That's it. You walk away from all this. You'll be happy. That's what she said. But it wasn't happening.
So, all right, you copped the plea.
Yep. A year and a day.
Year and a day. And where did he take you? Where did he send you?
So I got sentenced. This whole thing took about a year. I got sentenced December 2006. I was to report at the feds in January 2nd, 2007. So I show up to the federal building in Rochester. The U.S. Marshals take me to custody, and they put me in a holding pen, and they ship me from there to an immigration. One thing you learn about the feds is the feds have 1,000 different prisons throughout the United States. I was under the assumption I was going to go to a camp, right? So you have these camps throughout the state. You know, there's one in Pennsylvania. It's about 4 hours away. And they're like medium camps, you know, again. So I get this year and a day, which, by the way, you know, it doesn't seem like a long time. I know you guys had a guest here. The last podcast, you had someone did some serious time. Mm-hmm. But that year, and 1 day in jail is like an eternity. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it wasn't the big, serious 5, 10, 15, 20 grand, but that 1 year changed everything for me. You know, it changed everything that I went in there with. I came out with nothing. You know what I'm saying? To start all over again. So when you're in the Fed system, you know, they move you around and they try to figure out where they're going to place you. I'm thinking I'm going to go to a camp, and then I'm like, I go from this spot in Batavia. By the way, there's an immigration federal prison out in Batavia that you drive by all the time when you go to Buffalo. That a lot of people don't even know is there. It's right off the thruway. I went there. I was there for about 3 weeks. The first night was the worst night ever. No sleep. And then I got like food poisoning. Yo, it was just, I couldn't say, oh man, it was crazy. But yeah, it was real, man. It was a real life thing. And then I'm trying to figure out, you know, like the brother that was, what was his name? Ismail? Yeah, Ishmael. You know, you got to find out real quick what the rules are. You know what I'm saying? And I knew people that did time, and I got some. But all of that, you know, when you're there and you're locked up and you're with a bunch of criminals, it's a whole different culture. So I got shipped around from there, went to this space in Ohio. They held me there for like another 3 weeks, waiting for me to get my permanent spot where I'm going to be. So eventually I got placed in MDC, Brooklyn. So Metropolitan Detention Center, Brooklyn, which is a maximum prison. So I went from thinking I'm going to a camp to going to a maximum prison. So MDC Brooklyn is a detention center for the feds. So it's like a court, a county court jail, but it's a federal court jail. And who's placed in those prisons are people that are awaiting trial that have been federally charged in that jurisdiction. So you're looking at Brooklyn, mostly Brooklyn and Queens. People that are at the end of their bids. So you got a lot of people that did 20, 25 years, and they're about to get released into halfway homes. So they come there, and then from there they get released into the community. And then people like me that are doing 1 year, 2 years. And what they do is they use us to work the prison. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying? But you're still locked in a maximum security prison with criminals that are doing white-collar crimes and criminals that don't kill people. So that's what makes it a little rough.
Was that a 24-hour lockup or?
There's a maximum. So movement, there's no outdoor movement. But now, once you go to that prison, an inmate like me who has no priors and no violent offense, stuff like that, what they use me for is to work the prison. So I became like the garbage detail, which means I'm able to move around. I'm not a risk to try to run away. Right. I could go in between spots, and basically you just work and become a janitorial services, cleaning up this and that. Which, this old building in Brooklyn was infested with rats and roaches, and it was nasty. But again, you're locked up. I mean, and it's a 2-man cell. You're locked in. You count several times a day. There's no free movement. It's a maximum security prison. And there's hardcore criminals in there. I mean, and this is Brooklyn, so you're talking about anywhere from local drug dealers to Gambino stuff. You know what I'm saying? Straight up real mob stuff. Mm-hmm. So.
All right. So what was your mentals like, man? Emotionally, once you landed at Brooklyn, because it was. I remember visiting. I went to go visit you, and they had us. I found this to be strange. They didn't have just a regular go place, sit down, and I could see you across the table. It's not like state prison where they got a little room where you can go. They had everybody sitting side by side next to each other, and
in a waiting room.
Yeah, exactly, the waiting room. That's how we visited.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And this is the thing. I'm like, if they're doing this, I can't even imagine what it's like inside. So How did you being there just affect your mentals?
I mean, it was the toughest time of my life, man. It was dark. It was dark because when you're locked in that cell at night, and again for the kids and the youth, and you can't go nowhere. If you suffer from, and I didn't necessarily suffer from it, but if you suffer from claustrophobia, if you don't like tight spaces, if you like to just once in a while just get up and just walk around and get fresh air, that's all taken away from you. So every night when it's locked up, you know, and then I remember being in that one night, and I was never like that. I was never that claustrophobic. One night I just wanted to just get out of there, and I couldn't. And it mentally breaks you down, knowing that you cannot go anywhere. Like these walls, they're not going to move. You're here. This is what it is. And you know, it's the same old adage. You know, do the time, let the time do you. And you slowly start to learn how to deal with that. But mentally, it was tough. I was in a relationship at that time before, and that started to deteriorate really quick. And I had an OG that I met, and when I first got locked up, he's like, man, let me tell you something. Almost every single relationship that you might as well just be prepared that that's not going to happen. And so I took it for word, and I was like, okay. And so that started to fall apart, and then it was just like, it was rough, man. It was really rough. It was really, really, really rough in there.
Yeah, that's. All right, so you do your year, right? You do your time, and you had already said, "Yo, I'm done with the game." You get out. What happens now? I mean, you starting all over. What happens now? What was your mindset?
I mean, from the get-go, I knew what the plan was. It was immediately to. So when I knew that when I got released, I was going to be released to a halfway house. I knew I was going to be on probation for a few years. And it was just, I fell back into what I knew was right, and that was get a job. I mean, that was the first thing. Get a job, disassociate myself from a lot of, and I say this right now, there was a lot of friends of mine and people that I roll with that were really good people, man, but there was still in the game, and I just cut everything off, my friends and family, my family that I knew, I had some support when I got out, so I will say that. My mom, my dad, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I remember you. remember the car? But you might not know this, but
that was the whip, son.
I had this little Buick LeSabre that I always kept. It was like a little side whip, and you held it down for me when I was there. He picked me up with this Buick LeSabre.
That thing was like riding on air, bro. That thing was so smooth.
It was an old man car, but I was all about that. I did not care, man. And let me tell you something. When again, the jobs that I had to do when I was in there were nasty. You're talking about a building. You're talking about 2 buildings in Brooklyn that are rat infested. One time they called us up to do a special job, and it was to clean. So these big, the big compactors that do the garbage, right? So this is a prison, so there's garbage. People throwing garbage away every day. So they're throwing this garbage away and food and stuff. And when that trailer used to pull that in to the dock, when they would dump it, it had gotten so nasty and dirty that it had built this big, thick wall of just gooey and junk. Nasty, dirty stuff. So they had called us, and we had to get in these little suits, and it was like a bunch of us. And they gave us pickaxes and shovels, I don't know, this is all secure, though, but they're watching us. They're like, you need to clean that out. And so it was like, all right. So we start hitting this, and there's just rats jumping out of it. It was the nastiest, grossest thing you could ever do. And the smell and the stench. They ended up having a strip. When they strip us down to check us, whenever you come from a detail, you always got a strip search. They just said, just throw everything away, and we'll get you new stuff, because it was so nasty and stench. And, I mean, I never seen so many rats in my life, and this is New York City, you know what I'm saying? And it was, but I say that to say that when I was there, and I think anybody that's locked up will tell you this, I don't care how much money you have, where you come from, anything, you would give anything in this world, you would pay to just not be there and work at a McDonald's or any job. This doesn't matter. Like, as anything but this is going to work. You know what I'm saying? So that's the mentality that I had. I mean, I knew that when I was in there. I was like, that's what I get. I'm just going to go to a job. I knew. I said, I'm going to go straight to a temp agency, get the first job they offer me, and then just play it clean. You know what I'm saying? Really, I just cleaned it up. I was just focused on being clean. That's all it was.
Now, you had just a year and a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could you see yourself doing more time, as far as like maybe doing some serious time, 10, 15, 20 years? can you imagine how life might be for you mentally and just where you would be even if you got out? Like, do you think that prolonged time would change your perspective of life, over time?
Yeah, it's funny because when that first, and I don't know if you remember, I told you this. I told Pastor Lou, if I had to do those 5 years, I don't think I could do it. I was thinking, man, maybe I could sneak over to the Dominican Republic. I got family in DR. Man, it was a fantasy. I mean, I would have not, but it came across my mind. Like 5 years. And I want to say, I wasn't married, but I wasn't married and I didn't have any kids. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't a father at that time. I could never imagine. I'm a father now, beautiful 8-year-old boy, of ever having to do something to compromise my freedom. And because that, not seeing people in there, when you get those visits and you see those kids, if you're out there listening to this and you have kids, it's never, ever, ever, ever worth it under any circumstances. Yeah. But to have your children come visit you in prison, and I'm talking about the vulnerable young ones, the 5, the 6, the 7, who may not know what's going on, but when you see them and they're going to see you in that little side-by-side sitting waiting room, it's just never, never. So, I mean, just to say what you're saying, I hear what you're saying. So a prolonged period like that, 5 years, something like that, I mean, I'm a survivor. I would have figured it out, you know what I'm saying? But, I mean, that would have been even more motivation not to, I wasn't going to mess around after a year and a day, much less 5 years. Yeah. But I think that the people that do serious time, and that's one of the things that I usually don't really speak my story that much because I know people that did serious time. I know people that did serious time for crimes they didn't even commit,
and
20 years.
Because you talked about the recidivism rate.
Yeah, high, super high.
It's super high.
In the 80s, like 85%.
And it's still high, and even now.
Yeah.
Like, the people who get incarcerated and come back. Could it be tied to the length of time? Like for you, having a year, I mean, obviously, if you do a serious crime, we understand. Mm-hmm. You got to pay the time. You got to do your punishment. We get that. But for things like, maybe what you went through, other people who may not have had such, much of a serious crime, even though they committed it, but having such a prolonged time in conditions like that, do you think that has an effect on
Absolutely
on people when they get out?
Absolutely. I spent, again, my time was the year and a day. And when I came out, as soon as I walked out, I was shaking. And I had a cell phone and I grabbed it and I was shaking. I forgot how to use a cell phone. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So acclimating back to the regular life is something that's physically, emotionally overwhelming. So I can't imagine someone that's 5. So when I was in there, this was 2007, 2008, I knew people that I met in MDC Brooklyn that were on their tail end of their, 20-year sentence. So we're going back to the 80s, right? They don't know nothing. I mean, I knew what a cell phone was. We kind of had the internet. Things were starting to pop off then, but they had no idea. So a person that's doing 5, 8, 10 years, to readjust to the regular life is a tremendous, tremendous thing to overcome. It's no joke. And then if you don't have any support, if you don't have any family support, if you don't have a plan, if you don't stick to it, if you don't have the discipline, that's just.
Now, are there services while you're in prison that for someone like that, and I'm being real, like real services where they're really trying to help you, like, yo, bro, like, you got a second chance at life. Let's help you to make sure you make the most of it. Is there things like that going on?
There's always going to be some type of service available for you.
Okay.
But there's a disconnect. Do people take advantage of it? Are they aware of it? Do they have to do their own part? No matter how much services is there, if you don't do your own part, it's really easy to get caught back up in the lifestyle. So when I got out, I already knew what my plan was. But for someone else who didn't have that support, who didn't have a history, because, I knew what it was like to work. I knew what it was like to go to school. You know what I'm saying? So I knew that was the route. It was really clear for me. Got to work, possibly go back to school and get it. Now, I'm a convicted felon, so there was that obstacle. But if someone who's been to jail and has a violent, or say for a gun, that violence automatically takes them out of a lot of opportunities when they get out.
Right.
But there has to be some sort of support that's genuine. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I can show up to a services and take advantage of this and that. But sometimes those services, there's a lot of programs for anybody in this country, right? But do they necessarily work? Do they just fix an immediate problem? Like, okay, we're going to find you a place to stay, but what are we going to do after that?
Yeah.
How deep it is. I don't know. I see why the recidivism rate is so high.
Well, because that what I'm trying to get to is what it seems like the American prison system is built around. It's not really to rehabilitate, but more just to punish, right? So you got the punishment down. We got that. That's good. You know what I'm saying?
No, they're good at that.
Yeah. But as far as like rehabilitation, and I guess the question is it the responsibility of the state, if you will, to help in that process, or is it solely on the individual?
I mean, you would like to think so, right? Because they're putting you in, but I mean, you learn a lot about the phrase that comes out a lot, especially lately, is the prison industrial complex, right? So when I'm locked up, I'm doing a lot of reading. I'm really listening to these people that have done 5, 10, 15 years, doing a lot of knowledge, a lot of soul searching, and you learn about the system, right? Because it is a system, and there is money in it, there's power in it. These are real things. So that system doesn't seem like it's going to go away anytime soon. But you would think if the true essence of it was to rehabilitate, to avoid them coming back, then there'd be more money placed in that. But unfortunately, there's more money placed in the locking up part, in the punishment part. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of investment in the redemption of it. You see what I'm saying? So, and there's when I say money, a lot of money. Right? Which is what we always come back to is that root of evil. You know what I'm saying?
That's something me and you talked about. There's so much money to be made in America. We used to talk about that when we were roommates back in the day, and as Kurt is alluding to, I think the capitalism part of our nation they've tapped into it's a good resource.
Yeah, it is. It is. Because I remember I was doing a job. I was working for a company that was like what do you call it? Like a temp agency for construction workers. All right, and they sent me to this one job at the armory for the Army, and it was we were just building it, and so they were outfitting it with office furniture and all this other stuff here, right? And so I'm going in there, and we're building these cubicles and all this stuff here, and I look on the box, and it had some kind of corporation from Pennsylvania. And then I looked a little deeper, and it was a penitentiary. And I'm like, penitentiary? Wait, what a penitentiary? A corporation? Like that, it just didn't add up. And then the vice president came to see the work that we were doing and whatnot. And I heard him talking about, with another gentleman, he was talking about the prison system and how, man, we got these guys working for dirt cheap. I mean, he was that callous, man, that cold and callous. Like, man, we built this furniture for nothing. And then they can go and sell it, man. And I'm just thinking to myself, that's when I woke up to
the 13th
like,
Amendment.
Wait a minute, man.
Yeah.
Like, this is a business. Because I didn't know that at that time. I didn't know that prisons could be privately owned. I'm like, that's a conflict. How do we not see this as an issue? When a man can own a prison, that is a conflict, because now what that means is that's my business. Now, if you're any good businessman, I'm just putting two to two together, man. And I understand you do the crime, you need to pay the time. I get all of that, but there's something evil about when you allow a man to have an invested interest in other men failing at life, and then because they failed, women, I get the gain, right? And women, right? And so, but then not only that, but you got to think about, okay, any good businessman, he gonna market his business. He ain't out here just sitting around just like, okay, I'm gonna wait for it to come. He's thinking of strategies and ways to get that. So if my product is people, Now I got to come up with ways and things. And
That's a whole
it's a
nother
whole nother
show, bro. That's a whole nother show, son.
The school to prison pipeline, what you're talking about. So the prison that I went to real quick in Youngstown, Ohio, was a CSA or CSM. It was a private prison. So the difference between that and a state or federal state places, as soon as you go into these private prisons, everything's cheap. So you have a CO that if he was in the state, he'd be getting $60,000 a year, a pension, blah blah blah. Again, because we're talking about money here, you got someone they're paying $12 an hour watching criminals. They're putting, instead of 2 people in a cell, small cells, they're putting 3 people in the cells. So their interest is to get as many criminals in here as you want. They want you locking up everybody, and they don't care who it is. So they invest their money, they lobby, they try to get it. I mean, stories have come out. You can Google this anytime, like you said, the story. And there's cahoots with the judges. I'm sentencing these kids. You're like, what's going on here? There's an interest to keep people locked up because it all ties into money.
The new modern day slavery.
Yeah.
And that's the 13th Amendment. You know what I'm saying? You have rights, but once you get locked up, you give that all away. You know, and that's where you get into they're going to, again, I was working as basically a maintenance person in the prison. If they had anybody else doing those jobs, especially in New York, it's a union. It's $25, $30, $40 an hour, overtime, this and that. You get a break. No, I'm going to give this guy 20 cents an hour. I think that's what I was making, like 20 cents an hour. And how much money does it save them? So, yeah, that's a real
Jordans up
thing.
in there and everything.
and they get paid for having me. That's the other part that's crazy.
Yeah, it's like $75,000 per inmate. It's just crazy.
Crazy bonkers. All right, so before we close up, a couple things. Where you at now, man? You had a plan. You put your plan into action. What's going on?
Okay, so, you know, I just played it straight. Got a temporary agency job working at a factory. From there, I got another job, and it just went on a roll. And then I just got a good job at Time Warner Cable. 3 years after I got out of prison, I became married. A couple years after that, I had a son. And then one thing that I found about, and this is really important, because I was doing my research. That's another thing. You know, again, there are things that can help you overcome. Because now I'm a convicted felon, all right? And even though no matter what, wasn't a violent or anything like that, you still got that felony. So if you're trying to make it legit in life and you're trying to do the best for you and now my family, that's still a stain. Yeah, it's a stain. It doesn't go away. It ever goes away. But there's something in New York State called a relief for certificate of disabilities. And basically, you apply to the New York State Department of Probation. And basically all it is saying, listen, I'm rehabilitated, meaning I've proven to the state that, yes, I did this crime, but I haven't gotten in trouble ever since. It wasn't a violent crime. It wasn't a serious crime. And then what you do is you're awarded a certificate of disabilities, which allows you to basically, if you apply for certain jobs that are government jobs, because we're talking about taxpayers' money now, then they can now hold your felony against you. They can. It's a civil service law. And once I found that out, and it took a long time to find that out, a lot of paperwork, a lot of denials, and this and that, I realized, you know what? I can get a job with the government by taking the civil service exam. So that's what I did. I took a county civil service exam, and I did really well on it. And I was able to secure a job that's, become a career job for me now. And since then, I've got my bachelor's degree, and, so I just never really looked back. That life was never an option, because that life was never really a satisfying and happy place. It's a superficial thing, right? Like you were saying, you're having fun, you're dressing nice, you're going out, you're traveling, you're doing all this, but at the end of the day, you know that this just ain't the right thing to do. You know what I'm saying? That there's no better feeling for anybody, again, the kids out there. I don't care what job you're making. Waking up in the morning and going to work, all right, getting your paycheck and paying your own bills and building off of that foundation of just simple discipline and showing up to work. There's no better feeling than that. Not having to look over you. I mean, that feeling, though, I don't care what you was doing. You always had in the back of your feeling. You're driving around. I mean, to this day, I haven't done anything in years. But when a cop pulls up behind me,
You nervous?
not only because of the lifestyle I live, but because of the my complexion. But it's all good.
Complexion, you look, you white, you the whitest Dominican in the
He's not the
I
whitest
seen it in a
Dominican.
long time.
But I'm big, man. I got a bald head, so trust me, man. I've been pulled over plenty of times for no reason at all. But that feeling, being able to support my son, and it's a great feeling, man. You cannot replace that. I mean, it's just nothing better. It can be done. It can be done. You can do this.
Now, I heard you real quick. I heard you say that your parents brought you up in a Christian home.
Yes.
Now, since you got out, I haven't heard anything in that aspect. So what's up?
I will say this. When I went into prison, I was leaning very heavily into my faith. Up until then, even when I was in there. But I'll say this: while I was locked up, my faith, it was shattered. It was shattered. It was broken into a lot of little pieces.
Okay.
And let's just say that those pieces still haven't been put back together. So, I just kind of I get up, I go to work, I live a life of those certain values. But that's.
Now, is it, if I can dig a little bit?
Go ahead, man. Let's go.
They know this is what I do.
I know, I got you.
Now, do you feel like it's because of what you went through, and then maybe could it have been like people failing you during that time, or whatever the case may be? What I'm trying to get to is, do you see this as an issue with the Lord, or an issue with people that maybe even people who claim to be, believers?
No, it's not. It's not an issue with people, because the people that the faithful servants of God, my parents, so they've always been there for me. So I never have an issue with them, and I understand people generally, no matter who you are, you fall short. You have, there's a little bit of bad everywhere. So it's not that. It's just. It's just a personal thing with me.
Yeah. So it's between you and God.
Yeah.
Now, I know we talked before.
Yeah.
And I know even before you went to prison, you were struggling with your faith.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I just told you a couple of minutes ago, that's keeping it real, because you got to get down to the nitty gritty, right? In order to start to pick back up. You know what I mean? And we all got to answer our own questions. Lord got to speak to us individually. You know what I mean? And I just pray that comes into you, man. And I know you got Brother Lou right there. And Brother Lou had a big impact on me when I was coming into faith. Just got married and already thinking of divorce. You know what I mean? And he played a big part, so that's late to the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's serious, man. Like, just listening to your story, I'm seeing the hand of God over it.
Yeah, amen.
Straight up, man. I just listening to you, I'm like, bro, I don't see how you ain't.
I appreciate.
Like,
I
appreciate.
I love it.
I see God's hand, man, and His protection, and just allowing you to go through it. We suffer because like you said, you're doing what you're doing. You was trying to be low key, but God like stop it.
Yeah, listen, keep it real.
Yeah.
It could have went the other way around.
That's
You could have been selling, got bigger and bigger.
That's what I'm saying.
Head could have got bigger than what it is.
So this is, let me just, because I know, Zeke, you got a question? Before you get into that question, just to show you that I believe the hand of God it's still on Danny too, because listen, it's not just his mom who's been praying. There's been a lot of people praying for Dad. But after I became a believer, not too long after I became a Christian, I had a dream. I'm not big on dreams and stuff like that. I had a dream that I was living on our old street, Dayton. Now, Danny used to live with us for a little bit on Dayton Street. And across the street was my boy, the twins. They lived there. But in the dream, I saw a bunch of feds raiding the house. And they put up blue tape. And for some reason, I knew the blue tape meant like coke. Like they raiding this house for coke. And who they brought out was him. Now, this is like years before the DA's, the feds raided his house.
That's powerful.
So this was like so impactful to me. Like I hadn't talked to Danny for a little bit. I was like, I hit him up. I was like, yo, man, what's going on, bro? You still doing your dirt, whatever? He was like, nah, I'm not. I said, you still messing with any of that coke stuff? He was like, nah, I'm not really doing it. I'm just messing around with the weed stuff. I was like, yo, man, I'm just sharing with you. Had this dream. I'm not saying, I don't know. It just seemed so real to me. And it impacted me so hard. I just needed to share it with you. I don't remember if you remember me sharing that with you.
I do.
So I shared it with him. And he was like, nah, I'm good. I'm gonna keep it low key, which he was already doing. I'm gonna keep it low key. I was like, yo, just be careful out there, man. Be safe out there. Blah blah blah. About a year and a half, 2 years later, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
So I once again, I think the hand of God has been on your life, looking out for you. And these are things that on this side of eternity, it's hard for us to fathom the love of God, the understanding and wisdom of God towards the people that are broken, who do not know him at times, who may be rebellious. And I'm not saying that's you, that, but just in general, the revelation of God's love towards us is there's nothing you can compare it on this side of the world. The only thing you can come close to is a parent-child relationship. That's the closest thing you can come to. But even that, it is so much more God's love towards us. But I know Zeke got something for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of see if you could touch on the timeline of like how old were you when you first started smoking weed to the point where you wanted to grow as a sport your habit to where you got that heavy weight. Because going back to this message being for the kids, like how slippery of a slope it could be. Like you think you good, but before you know it, you're at January 2007. You're locked up. So from the time you started smoking weed to the time you got locked up, like what was the timeline like?
When I really started smoking weed on a regular basis was probably, after high school. When I got back, I went away. I was in the Army for a little bit, in the reserves, and when I got back home, that was like my summer. So it was like the summer of '93. But it really started to become a thing when I was starting to break down stuff. I ended up going back to college, and that's when the party atmosphere really kicked up. And with the party, there's drugs, and the smoking really picked up around those years. So for a few years when I was in college, talking about like 95, 96, 97. And then, that's when I kind of just got lost and just wasn't really focused on anything specific. And that's when the temptation really became a real thing. So you're talking about the end of 98, 99, dibbling, dabbling, small time stuff, nothing serious. But still, the thing was, too, I may have not been doing big things then, but I was surrounded by users, people that partied and used just as well. So it was it was the summer of 2000. 2001 was when I met that connect. And it had been building up until then. So when I got that connect, that's when, I was ready to go because I knew exactly who to go with to distribute this thing, to get rid of this stuff. So, that's the timeline. And then from then until 2005, I had a good 4 or 5 year run. Yeah. And I was, I was like, I was grown at that time, to be honest, you know what I'm saying? But again, I wasn't tied down with any kids. I don't know what had happened. I'd like to believe that I wouldn't have taken those risks if I had a child, but, who knows?
Yeah.
All right, man. Yo, Big Dat, man. Appreciate you coming on here, sharing your story, being
no doubt.
transparent. I know it's not easy for people sometimes to come up and share their lives. So, man, thanks again. And, we're praying for you, man. Seriously.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
TATS Nation, keep riding. TATS crew gonna keep driving. We out.
See ya.